Hey everyone, Mr. Macintosh here. Now that the macOS Sequoia 15.3.1 update is out, let's take a look at whether we should install it on our unsupported Macs with the latest version of OpenCore Legacy Patcher. I apologize for not getting this out within a couple days after the supported update video, but it worked out well because I was lucky enough to be able to talk to Mykola about some of the issues that I found in the last video, and those revolve around the MetalLibSupport package being downloaded and prepared before the update, and what's going on with macOS Big Sur on unsupported Macs. And we're going to be able to cover 12 different unsupported Macs with the latest version of 15.3.1. We got a lot to cover. Let's jump in and get started. I do these videos because I want to test on these devices so you don't run into trouble on your own personal Mac. Let me run the gambit on these machines, because if something goes wrong, no big deal. I can get them all up and working again. But if you have only one system, you don't want to have that go down. The good thing is a lot of the OpenCore Legacy Patcher updates and macOS updates have been reliable, and they've worked very well for a large portion of users. There's always going to be a percentage of users that do have problems with the update or the latest version of OpenCore. Heck, if you look at the Reddit forums, sometimes even supported Macs have issues with the latest version of macOS, and that just comes with the territory of installing on thousands upon thousands of devices. That's why we're here, to be able to test on multiple different versions to see if we can find any issues before we get started. What is in the 15.3.1 update, and does it have anything to do with unsupported Macs that could make them work better or secure them with security updates? I talked a little bit about my 15.3.1 supported video, and in there I said, well, what the heck is going on in this update, because there's not any CVEs or vulnerabilities that Apple posted on their security website to tell what's in this update. So if we take a look at the Apple security release page, we can see that there's information about the iPad OS and iOS 18.3.1 update. Big fixes included in here, right? But when we get down to Sequoia, it says that there's no published CVE entries. So you might think, well, what's going on? So let's take a look at the other page. What's new in updates for macOS Sequoia? All we have is this update provides important security fixes and is recommended for all users. Now, in my 15.3.1 supported video, I said, well, what the heck is going on here? Is it important? Is there a security update that Apple found that they fixed? Is there a portion of the operating system that was hardened to protect future attempts at a security problem? We don't know because it's so vague in here, right? So I brought this topic up with some of my fellow Mac admins, and we talked about whether we should deploy this to our fleet. We looked at past updates and we said some of the previous updates that Apple has put out, they did the same wording, and it ended up that Apple themselves fixed something internally on the system. And while I wish that they would give us more information, that's all we could gather. So we have to trust Apple here in the fact that if this is important enough to push out an entire update, we need to try to read what we have here to think that it is important to us, even though it's not listed here as a public vulnerability under a CVE entry. That covers what's going on in 15.3.1. You as a user have to make the judgment on whether you want to put your unsupported Mac through this update. I usually try to steer you in a certain direction to keep your Mac secure. I want to always make sure that your machine's not vulnerable to a specific attack. It's a tough call, right? I don't want to recommend and cause any issues with your machine, but I also don't want to say, oh, don't install it, because maybe it does fix something really important that hasn't been published yet. I'm going to leave this to use your best judgment on this call. If you do want to install it, that's why I'm going to give you a full walkthrough next on how to update your Mac to the latest version of 15.3.1, then go over it on 12 different devices. But before then, I want to talk about my discussions with Mykola on MetalLibSupport package and macOS Big Sur. Okay, the next thing I wanted to talk about is the MetalLibSupport package, and you've heard me talk about this and give full demos on how this system works in previous OpenCore Legacy Patcher update videos. As I've continued to test, it seems like there's an issue with obtaining this package during the prepare for update process. So what does that look like? When we go into System Settings and click download the latest macOS updates, what'll happen is this file here, system volumes update update.plist, will be modified because it's detecting a new update is being downloaded and prepared. Now this is what's called as a watch path. So this launch daemon will recognize there's a change here at this watch path, and what it'll do is it'll kick off this binary, the OpenCore Legacy Patcher binary command line interface in the background, and run this option, prepare for update. And when that happens, it's going to run against this log, and we can actually run that live. If we open up terminal, we can run that so you can see this in action, and it will write a log to here showing what's actually happening. So there's a string, and we can show you what happens in the background when a macOS update starts. Give it a back tick and kick it off. And there it is. It's running here, it's checking to see if anything is needed, and it's saying that there's no update stage, so it doesn't have to do anything. But one of the things that it's going to do is it's going to check to see if there's a kernel debug kit available on the GitHub page, which is right here. And for example here, if it detects that there is a kernel debug kit available, it's going to download that to the system, caches it for when it comes back up, and it needs to apply it, because when we come back up after the update, we don't have any Wi-Fi or internet, so it's there and ready to go. And you can see that right here. In this particular situation, there was already a KDK ready to go, so it did not need to pull it, and it's good to go. But what this should also do is it should also pull the MetalLibSupport package first. And this is an example of a screenshot of pulling down the kernel debug kit when we're going through the update. But what we found here is after running multiple tests, it does not seem to be pulling down the MetalLibSupport package during the same process when it's doing the prepare for update. So I reached out to Mykola, and he was so generous to hear me out and listen to this process, and he said he was going to take a look at that because he was able to look at the code and see it is supposed to do both. Check for the kernel debug kit and for the MetalLibSupport package. And from every test that I found, it does not seem to be pulling that MetalLibSupport package and caching it before we start the update. Now, whether that causes any issues is up. From what I've been able to see, it doesn't, because it's still able to use a previous version like we've talked about in the past. So if we look at our MacBook Air here, we can see, and we go to Library Application Support, Dortania, and we can see there's previous versions of the MetalLibSupport package in here that it can use. So for example, if it didn't pull and cache 15.3.1, it was able to use 15.3, and a lot of times it'll work just fine. It's not the end of the world that this isn't working, but let's say that there is a change that's required in there, and we need that first. We probably want to be able to download it first. So Mykola said he was going to take a quick peek at that, and I'm going to continue to test him because I don't want to have him, because he's so busy as is, I want to see if I can provide him with some more information on this. So now that we got that down, let's look at the next issue that you've been having trouble with, macOS Big Sur and OpenCore Legacy Patcher 2.2.0. So this issue is pretty serious. The reason why it wasn't widespread, we can finally discuss now. So as soon as users put in some of the comments, and I saw some threads on the OpenCore Legacy Patcher Discord, that there was problems with macOS Big Sur in the latest version of OpenCore, I finally was able to pull up my Big Sur system to dive in and see if we could figure out what was going on here. At first I pulled up my early 2013 system, ran the latest OpenCore EFI, and I applied the root patches with the latest version 2.2.0, no issues. So then I started looking at it. The Metal supported machines from 2012 or newer does not have any issue, so you're good to go. Now what makes things even more tougher to find is that not as many people are running macOS Big Sur anymore. A lot of people are running macOS Monterey, macOS Ventura, or Sonoma, or even Sequoia, and a lot of people have left macOS Big Sur behind. After further testing, I found that it is non-metal machines that are having this issue. So what happens is that for 2011 and lower, what will happen is if you install the latest version available, which is 11.7.10, and that's the final version ever for macOS Big Sur, we're never going to get another update again, and then they apply the OpenCore EFI, it's still fine. The problem comes in when they install the post-root patches. That's where the issue is. Once this is applied and the system restarts, it will never boot again. And what's happening is the system is kernel panicking. And that's why when you see the reports of this issue, it stops at a progress bar and then never moves. But if you turn on verbose mode boot, which is Command V on boot, or you hit the space bar and click on verbose, you'll see that it's full-fledged kernel panicking during the boot process. Now, one thing that I totally forgot about was the fact that Big Sur is different than previous operating systems because you cannot revert the root patches on the system. And we can take a look at the documentation that explains that. So if we go to the troubleshooting pages, this shows us, and we've gone over this in the past, how to boot into recovery and revert the root patches with the last sealed snapshot so we can go back and troubleshoot. But here is the problem. This applies to macOS Monterey and newer. Big Sur does not support snapshot reversion, which is basically loading back the last sealed snapshot. So this causes additional issues for Big Sur users that are stuck in that situation, because you can't just boot into recovery with the other, like you could in the other operating systems, and revert the root patches and come back and fix your system. But there is a way out of it. So if this happens to you and you can't boot, what you need to do is boot into recovery again. Basically hold down Option, hit the space bar, and click macOS Big Sur Recovery, and all you need to do is click reinstall macOS Big Sur over the top of your installation. That retains your data and also reinstalls all the base system files and overwrites all the root patches from OpenCore Legacy Patcher. So when it comes back up, EFI will still allow it to boot, but it'll boot into the system. It'll be unaccelerated. The solution is to download 2.1.2, the previous version that does not have the problem with 2.2.0 root patches. Now, normally I always say keep up to date, but in this case, a lot of the fixes in 2.2.0 and newer apply to later operating systems like macOS Sequoia. So macOS Big Sur on non-Metal devices runs just fine on 2.1.2. You install those root patches and everything will be good to go. And if for now, until this gets fixed, what you can do is go into the application and turn off updates if you keep getting the message saying, hey, your OpenCore Legacy Patcher app is out of date. So that covers the macOS Big Sur issue for non-Metal devices in 2.2.0. Now let's go through a live demonstration on updating to macOS Sequoia 15.3.1 on our demonstration machine, MacBook Pro 15-inch 2017 with a touch bar and the T1 security chip. Now what we're going to do is we're going to watch the OpenCore Legacy Patcher launch statement live like we talked about earlier in the video, and that's going to go kick off once we start the update. So all we need to do is go into system settings, and we already see the updates available, so we'll click on that, and then we'll click on update now, and we'll watch the system go live. So if you have OpenCore Legacy Patcher in your dock, you'll be able to see it fire up with the little dot under there, because it detects that the update.p list is being modified and prepared. There it goes. See that? It jumped up and down once, and it's live right now. And now it has detected that we are downloading and installing 15.3.1, and it needs to prepare the system. Let's click OK, and there it is. It's downloading the latest kernel debug kit 24D70, and there goes the download. So if we wanted to, we could look at that live log in our users shared, and we can see there's our log that's being written to right now at 10:31 p.m. We can hit the spacebar to take a peek at that. There it is. It checked and it found that there's a match for the kernel debug kit for 15.3.1 against the list of kernel debug kits on the GitHub page right here at this URL. So it's immediately downloading it, and it's going to stash that, and it's going to be ready to go at the update time. And this is also a good thing, and when I mentioned that I'm late on this video, at the time of the supported video, there wasn't a kernel debug kit available. If we look at the site, this was released after my video. When I first checked, there wasn't anything available for a kernel debug 15.3.1 when we first started doing it. So that's kind of a situation where I've mentioned in the past where sometimes you gotta wait a day because the MetalLib support package needs about 4 hours to build on the server, and Apple might not release the kernel debug kit until like here later after the update's already out. So in this situation, the test devices that I already built don't even have the 15.3.1 kernel debug kit because it wasn't released when I installed the update. So if we go back to that Mac Pro, we can see right here, look at that. When I installed it for my video, for the supported system, latest kernel debug kit was 15.3. So here's how we can confirm that. If we go in an OpenCore Legacy Patcher right now and we run the root patches, guess what it's going to find? 15.3.1 KDK. Start. There it is. Again, I always recommend having the latest version of the kernel debug kit for your system and your root patches. But Mykola and the developers have said in the past, usually 1 or 2 behind is going to be compatible. Again, for maximum compatibility, you would want to have the equal versions 15.3.1 and 15.3.1. So by doing this, we're now downloading the latest version 15.3.1 and we're going to reapply those to the root patches, and we will be 100% equal at this point. So this will download it. You'll see a folder here. It's going to stash it. It's going to apply those root patches and the latest version of the KDK, and we'll be fully up to date. Now it's installing. There it goes. It cleared out the old versions, and now it's going to put it back into the KDK folder. Keep in mind, this is actually part of the root patching system too, is to clean out the previous versions of the KDK to keep things clean, because of the size of those KDKs can build up over time. So you saw that the proper way of doing it is cleaning them out, and we should see after this is done here installing the KDK, we'll see a new folder and the package left here in the KDK folder. We'll give it a second here, and there it is. We got our folder and we got our stashed package, because what happens is after an update is installed, this folder gets modified and we need to reinstall the KDK fresh from the package. So now it's going to apply those root patches with the latest version of the KDK reboot, and we'll be fully up to date with our Mac Pro. Now back to our demonstration system here, what we're going to see is now we're preparing the update. So we've got the latest version of the KDK, and we're going to prepare the update, and it's going to be able to install, and we'll be right back up to finish that whole process. Now again, I totally understand I'm getting into the weeds here. If you have any questions on this process, please let me know in the comments. And the reason why I'm doing this is that I know this can be glossed over when we're going over so many details here, but I want you to understand the system. So if you have any problems, you have the power to be able to check all these locations and all these little things and repair your system. Once you have that knowledge, you can also share that with others that might be having the same issue. The more we have the power to learn about how the system works, the more we can share with others and get them back up and running again on their system. This is a very small update. I'm going to kind of speed through the testing on these devices and just do a quick overview on the systems. So first, we'll start off on our 12-inch Retina early 2016 MacBook. Now, one thing I've covered last time, but I want to make sure I cover again, is if you see the Wi-Fi icon like this, where it's all grayed out, all you need to do is to get it to light up is just click on it once. That will toggle that system, and it'll show you that you're good to go, and that'll last throughout the entire login session. So everything is showing good on this 2016 12-inch MacBook. Next up is our Retina MacBook Pro 15-inch mid-2014 Kepler machine. This is the system that we've talked about in the past that has had issues with the system settings and properly being able to download the update. It stalls, it doesn't load, it's a pain in the ass. The best way I've seen to be able to do this is when it shows up in here, just click this and then wait until it shows up. It'll be slow, and just click update now. Don't go into the details of the update. That's where it seems to cause issues. And just sit back and let it go. That's where I've seen it work the best, and that's still an issue on these devices with doing it. And I'm not sure what the issue is, but we did narrow it down to the Kepler devices from 2013 and 2014 with the software updates having a big issue. I talked about the MetalLibSupport package and all that stuff, and if that was just too much details, all you need to do is go into OpenCore Legacy Patcher and rerun the post-install root patches. And if there's a new version of the MetalLibSupport package that you didn't catch the first time around, it will pull it in the second run. To verify that, all we need to do is go into that folder to see if we've got it. So you go back to your root, you go library, application support, Dortania, and then MetalLibSupport package. And now we know we're on 15.3.1. We do not have the latest version. And that's how we can check. That's how we can verify. So when we see that, we know there is one. So all we need to do is run those root patches again, click on install root patch. And then even though it says this, that was at the time it patched. It was all clear. here. What it'll happen is if the root patches aren't installed, then it'll show that you need to install this, but the system is unable to check for the latest version of kernel debug and the latest version of MetalLib. So we'll just run it again and it should pick up 15.3.1. It's fetching, and there it is, it found it. Now it's going to download it and put it into this folder, and we're going to be all squared up with the latest version. If Mykola is able, if there's an issue here, what it'll happen is that could be fixed, and when it runs the system before you install the update, it's going to run the prepare for update. Then it can reach out and say, hey, I need a MetalLib support package, download it and cache that right then. By the time the update happens, it's already cached, and it can apply it after the system comes back up after the update and applies the root patches, and then you're fully squared. So you don't have to do it again the second time. So we'll let this finish up and we'll be all squared away on this mid-2014 15-inch MacBook Pro. Next up is our MacBook Air early 2014 11-inch. This little guy is doing very well, and we can see that we already did that and showed that I installed the MetalLib support package after on February 10th, that day that it came up, because this is one of the demo machines that I was showing in my supported video. So everything is okay on the system and is ready to go, and it is squared away and running very well. Next up is our Mac Pro late 2013 trash can. As we saw just earlier in the video, we ran those post-root patches because we found out that after the initial installation, that Apple came out with a kernel debug kit after. I did the initial run through on my supported video, and there wasn't a KDK. Everything installed fine. It was working great. But now we realized after checking, there was a kernel debug kit for 13.3.1 that was released after. We ran the post-install root patches, pulled that down, and we are squared away for this late 2013 Mac Pro. Up next is our MacBook Pro 13-inch mid-2012, and this particular system was patched on the 14th, and we can see that something else went wrong trying to get the MetalLib support package in this log. So if we look here, we can see that we don't have the 15.3.1 MetalLib support package. So why not? Well, if we go to the logs in the Dortania folder, so your user library folder, logs Dortania, and then we open up the patching log here on the 14th, we can see a little bit of a closer view on what's happening here. What it did is it immediately tried to reach out to see the MetalLib support list, and it says it could not fetch the MetalLib list. So what it's going to do is fall back to the local MetalLib, finding the 15.3 package, and it found that, and then it started to apply that. Why couldn't it reach out to that server? Well, there's two reasons. Either there's a problem with the server at the time, or we come back up after the update and we do not have an internet connection. So if that's the case, that puts you into a double problem. A, it wasn't pulled down like we talked about earlier in the video during the prepare for update phase while it had internet. Then after the update is complete, it comes back up and it doesn't have internet because the Wi-Fi drivers aren't installed. So then it can't reach out to grab the latest version of the MetalLib support package. What do we do then? Well, just like I talked about earlier, all we need to do is when we don't see that 15.3.1 in here is run them again. So we'll run that post-root patch again, and then we'll run it again. And there it is. Now that we have internet, it sees that there's the MetalLib for 15.3.1. It's going to download it, install it, and then it's going to be able to patch. So if we go back to that log folder, we'll see right in here it working properly. So if we scroll down here, check it out. Found the MetalLib support recommended 15.3.1 24D70 from the proper MetalLib URL. It can reach it, it can see it, it's pulling it down, and we're good to go. When that can't happen in the prepare for update phase or before you get internet access, that's where the problem's going to arise. And again, we talked about it's not the end of the world because it used 15.3 and the system's still up and running, but that's how to get squared up. So let this finish and we're good to go on our mid-2012 13-inch MacBook Pro. Next up is our Mac Mini server, late 2012 i7 quad-core. Now in this situation, this system was good with the MetalLib support package, because if we look at the log here, we can see what happened. Came back up after the update, it detected that the snapshot was sealed. And when it's sealed, that means we're right after a fresh macOS update that was installed, and we do not have root patches applied. We have to open up the seal, apply the patches, apply MetalLibSupport package, and then reboot, and we're good to go with our accelerated graphics, Wi-Fi, and all our patches. So I found that, downloaded 15.3.1, and we are good to go on this particular system. No issues whatsoever. This mini server is running very well. Now we're in the non-metal zone, 2011 and older, and where we usually start to see some of the issues with app compatibility with metal heavy apps and stuff like that. We got to keep it a close eye on. And since I ran this as one of the first preview test Macs in my supported video, the KDK was not available, and we can see that right here. There was no match when it checked the API for KDK support package, nothing there. So we use 15.3 and we're good to go. But what we now know what we need to do if we want to be squared up. We need to run that patcher again. So all we need to do is open up OpenCore and run that guy, and we're going to have 15.3 downloaded and ready to go. And start. There it is. So we'll let that apply, reboot, and our 17-inch late 2011 MacBook Pro should be good to go. Next up is our polycarbonate MacBook 13-inch mid-2010. And we can see here that we do not have the 15.3.1 KDK. And I finally looked back because I had to find out. It was released on the 17th. So if we look at the logs here, we installed this on the 14th. We can see that by going back into those logs. Yep, we installed on February 14th, and we did not have, obviously, since it came out the 17th, we did not have the KDK, so we can open up OpenCore Legacy Patcher again and do just what we did on the previous machine to get all up to date with 15.3.1 KDK. Install post, and start root patching. Here it is. Let this go, and we're good to go on our MacBook 13-inch mid-2010. Now we're back to 2010 with the king, the Mac Pro 2010. See that we ran the root patches before the 17th, so we do not have the 15.3.1. So we'll do just like we did in the previous video, or the previous machine, and we'll get the latest 15.3.1 KDK by running those root patches again. There it is. So everything's looking good again on our mid-2010 Mac. Next up is our old timer, our 15-inch MacBook Pro late 2008. Do not recommend Sequoia on this device, but it is still chugging along, and we still had to try it, right? But this system would probably be better off with macOS Monterey or macOS Ventura, just due to how old it is and the Core 2 dual processor. But it's still kicking it, and we're going to continue to test it. We can see here we ran the root patches on the 14th, and we will need, just like the previous system, to install the 15.3.1 KDK through the patching system to get squared up here. Click post install root and start root patching. There we go. And there's our MacBook Pro 15-inch late 2008. I wanted to thank Mykola for all of the help that he's given me on the questions that I have brought to him in the past, and a lot of these questions are coming directly from you, and he takes the time to be able to explain these things to try to help answer some of these questions. I can't tell you how much I appreciate that, and the fact that he has a job, he has a life, and he's the lead co-developer of the entire OpenCore Legacy Patcher platform, which is a monumental task. Here's another example of something that he's been doing. He's been making speeches at conferences, and he's really going all in. And he made a wonderful presentation today at the Utah Mac Admins meeting on electron security, making your Mac and PC a worse place. And he went into a really nice presentation. And I'll put a link to that in the description if you want to take a look at that video. And always take a look at the OpenCore Legacy Patcher Open Collective if you have the means to be able to provide for the project. And I also wanted to thank readers. I can't believe I forgot that this was here, because I looked at this before for the Chrome issues and the red and the rendering issues in the red and stuff like that. I also wanted to thank Neon for calling out the Big Sur issues and how he talked to Mykola about this to get this moving for the macOS Big Sur and 2.2.0. If you have any questions on 2.2.0 and 15.3.1, let me know in the comments, and we will catch you in the next video. Thank you.